My name is Jamie. I am 63 years old. A few years ago, I lost my husband and now live on a pension. However, my life is not as lonely as it might seem. I have been part of a choir for many years and have many friends, making my life quite lively. My husband passed away after a long illness, and since I no longer have caregiving duties, people say I look a bit younger now. Of course, I loved my husband and wanted to be with him forever, so there are days when I feel sad that he is not by my side. On those days, I talk to his photo or sing my favorite songs, remembering how he always enjoyed my stories and songs with a smile. Also, I keep it a secret from others, but my husband left me a considerable amount of money in addition to the house. I usually get by on my pension, so I don't think about it much, but having a safety net for emergencies is a great comfort. I thought I would continue to live peacefully like this, but then I received a call from my son Trace, who had been working abroad, saying that he and his wife were moving back to America and wanted to live with me. I was happy to see their faces in person, not just through video calls, and thrilled to see my grandson Lionel. But I had one concern. It was about Trace's wife, Kristen. She appears friendly and pleasant on the surface, but I somehow find her difficult to get along with. She seems to have a two-faced nature or sometimes even feels a bit intimidating. However, listening to my friends complain about their daughters-in-law made me wonder if my feelings towards Kristen were just the typical mother-in-law jealousy. With mixed feelings, I reluctantly agreed to live with my son and his family as their return date approached. I never expected things to turn out the way they did. It's been a while, Jamie. Feel free to ask for anything. I'll take care of you, she said with a smile, and I was shocked. I had no intention of being taken care of. Moreover, the way she said it felt condescending. At that time, I just thought she didn't know how to talk properly, but as we started living together, my bad feeling turned out to be correct. In public, she pretends to be attentive, but she does surprising things, even with something as simple as laundry. I noticed early on that she didn't like my laundry mixed with theirs, so I washed my clothes separately, but I never imagined she would re-wash everything just because a single kitchen towel was mixed in. She would toss the freshly washed laundry back into the machine with a scowl, picking up the kitchen towel with disdain, as if handling something filthy, and throw it aside, saying, "It smells, don't mess with us." Another time, when I brought in all the laundry during a sudden rain shower while she was out, she re-washed it even though it was mostly dry. Bacteria can get on it. It seemed that tongue-clicking was a natural habit for her. I didn't expect thanks for what I did, but I never thought I would be treated like this. Do I smell that bad? Worried, I asked my friends and even used an odor detector, but my friends laughed it off, saying I didn't smell, and the detector showed values well below the standard level. This is the worst. Don't put it in this shoe rack. It's dirty. One day, Kristen was using tongs to pick out my shoes. I didn't remember putting them there, so Trace must have done it to be thoughtful. His subtle kindness always made me happy, which is why Kristen's treatment filled me with anger. Stop treating my shoes like they're trash. She laughed and sneered at the shoe she had tossed aside. Jamie. She turned around with a surprised look on her face. I was just trying to clean out the shoe rack. Then it looked like there was a bug on the shoe, so I threw it. I couldn't believe she could come up with such an excuse on the spot. Oh, really? I don't see any bugs around here. And you were using tongs to pick up the shoe, weren't you? Maybe you just didn't see it? In the end, she played dumb and refused to admit her mistake. This wasn't the only thing that made me furious. Kristen never let my grandchild eat the meals I prepared, no matter how much effort I put into cooking. Please help yourself, she would say with a big smile, refusing to eat anything. Not only that, but she would come up with all sorts of reasons to stop my grandson from eating as well. She used the ingredients I bought without a word and disrupted all my plans. She takes the ingredients but refuses the food. It seems she wants to reject anything I touch. In the end, the only one who appreciates my cooking is kind Trace. If I talked to him about these issues, I'm sure he would listen and even caution her. He reminds me so much of his father in this way, always dependable. But Trace works long hours, up early in the morning and home late at night, always giving his best. I feel guilty about bothering him with these problems. I'd rather let him rest when he gets home. Besides, for now, Kristen doesn't seem to mind Trace eating my cooking. As long as Trace enjoys my meals, I try to convince myself it's okay. But then, "You must never eat what old people make." Kristen was scolding Lionel when she thought I wasn't around. "I told you, you'd get sick if you ate that stuff, didn't I? Don't you hear me? Stop trying to eat old people's food, I always tell you. Stop scolding the child for unreasonable reasons." I couldn't hold back any longer. I told Lionel, who was holding back tears, to go play outside, and I turned to face Kristen. "You always tell him not to eat my food, don't you?" "Oh, Jamie, did you hear something?" she said nonchalantly. "I heard you clearly. Are you saying he'll get sick from eating my cooking? What's wrong with it? The ingredients and seasonings are all from the same kitchen. There's no way it could be unhealthy." But she smiled maliciously. "I used to overlook what old people did, but I should have just thrown it away. It's sad you can't see how much we're putting up with." She used to pretend to be civil, but it seemed she no longer cared to hide her true feelings. Kristen crossed her arms and snorted. "If you're a cornered old woman, you should just stay in your room and be quiet. You run around unnecessarily, cooking even though nobody asked you to, always being so selfish. And you're hoarding wealth, aren't you? Living together, I thought you'd give us some, but you don't care at all." She made a grimace and spat out one insult after another. But it wasn't enough for her. She stomped her foot. "Can't you figure it out? Or are you just stupid?" I was stunned by her words. Indeed, my friends often tell me how energetic I am. I love not just singing but also moving my body, so I go out for walks as well. Going out and having fun is my choice, right? It's not like I'm spending money on expensive hobbies or causing any trouble, am I? If my cooking is a problem, then I won't do it anymore. But you have no right to talk about my property. You think I'm dumb? Then what do you call your comments? Honestly, I don't even need to live here. If you hate it so much, why don't you leave? You don't even pay for the things I buy that you use up." Kristen laughed as I confronted her. An old lady whining desperately. "If you want to kick me out, go ahead. But if you do, I'll make sure you never see Trace or Lionel ever again," she threatened in a low voice, leaving with a victorious laugh. I can't believe this. I never imagined Trace's wife could be this awful. But now, I felt completely liberated from any restraint. A week later, when I came back from choir practice, I heard Kristen laughing in the living room. She was probably talking trash about me on the phone with someone again. That's right. Our old lady still hasn't kicked the bucket. She went out for choir practice today. It's heaven without her, really. I mean, I can't be the first one to go, right? Whether it's heaven or hell, she should just hurry up and go. Maybe she'll have a heart attack during practice. Ha ha ha. Hearing her laugh while saying such horrible things made me feel pure disgust. But she didn't think I could hear her, so she kept laughing obnoxiously and saying awful things. Exactly. If she's going to die, she should do it outside all at once. And her husband is a problem too. Like you said, I've been adding more salt to her cooking, but nothing changes. How many years does it take? It's so annoying. We can't live together forever like this, she said in a sweet, fake voice, and I clenched my fists tightly. I want to introduce the kids to a new dad soon. So, I'll do whatever it takes to get that inheritance. Unbelievable. Not only did she think of me as an obstacle, but she was also betraying Trace. I stood next to Kristen, who was lounging around sloppily, and shouted loudly. You! Get out right now! What? What the heck? Kristen was so startled she fell off the sofa and hit something. You were back? Kristen laughed awkwardly, trying to cover up. Get out right now! I'm kidding, Jamie. Come on. Don't make me repeat myself. Stand up. Kristen jumped up at my command. Of course. I was the former leader of a famous choir. Even though I had been holding back on my vocal exercises at home since living with my son's family, practicing by the river while walking, my lung capacity was still unbeatable. Attention! Kristen, though unwilling, followed my command, shocked. I knew how to give orders with authority from years of leading people. Get out! Stunned, Kristen grabbed her smartphone and dashed out the front door. But she wasn't gone for long. A few hours later, she came back with Trace, who had been at work, and she returned with a creepy smile. Jamie, are you feeling better? I was just getting excited over a drama with my friend. It's so mean to misunderstand. I was amazed at her audacity, how she could act so shamelessly. Still, once something is said, it can't be taken back. I replied in a very cold tone. What do you want? I'm not heading to heaven just yet, so there's no point in checking. Oh, Jamie, don't say things like that. That's not funny. No, Kristen, I understand what you really think now. Well, I knew it, but thanks for confirming it. Even my old brain can grasp it clearly now. Seeing my cold demeanor, Kristen seemed to start giving up. I told you, it's a misunderstanding. I smiled at the angry Kristen. Did you share this with Trace? This? What I showed her was a recording of Kristen talking on the phone from a few hours ago. The audio was captured clearly. In our choir, we always record videos and share them with the members to discuss improvements, so even at over 60, this kind of operation is a piece of cake for me. Kristen must have underestimated me, thinking an old lady like me couldn't possibly do that. Seeing her flustered, I continued mercilessly. You moved into someone's house and not only badmouthed your mother-in-law, but also planned to get rid of her. And then you tried to ruin my health with overly salty food. I noticed something was off, but it was your doing, wasn't it? Well, that's... Shame on you! It was my second loud outburst of the day. What? As Kristen sat on the floor, Trace silently handed her the divorce papers. When it comes to important matters, he is usually gentle, but when he gets silently angry, it's a point of no return. Seeing the neatly filled out divorce papers, Kristen began to tremble. No, listen, it's really a misunderstanding. I even went with you on your overseas assignments and stayed with you. We have children. Isn't this too cruel? Please. Kristen desperately clung to Trace, but he brushed her hand away and, with a heavy sigh, retreated to his room. Kristen was left looking helpless and dejected. Seeing her like she might turn to stone if left alone, I spoke to her. Trace wasn't just sitting idly by. He investigated why his overseas assignment was abruptly shortened, and his evaluation lowered. Ignoring Kristen's odd noises, I continued. You called your lover overseas, didn't you? And you caused a scene at the hotel where you stayed. The business partner saw through it and mistakenly thought you were fooling around with his approval. Naturally, they took you off the project. With nothing to say in her defense, Kristen was silent. That misunderstanding has finally been cleared up. He might get another overseas assignment. Do you understand? Even without our issues, you two were already finished. And no matter how kind he is, he can't keep someone around who wishes he'd disappear. Here, take the pen and write your name. Resolutely, I urged Kristen. A few weeks later, after the divorce proceedings and the filing for compensation in court were settled, I thought I could finally take a breather, but then Kristen boldly showed up at our house. She really is relentless. Give me back my child! Holding a megaphone, she screamed in front of our house, making my head spin. Everyone, this person in this house made up all sorts of lies to kick me, her daughter-in-law, out. She took my husband and son from me. Along with the loud noise, I could hear the stray cats in the neighborhood howling. People passing by were chuckling at her dramatic performance. Please, just give me my son back. I gave birth to him. I carried him for 9 months. Trace had just taken Lionel to the zoo to give him a change of scenery, sparing him from this sad situation. Feeling relieved, I stood up to silence Kristen. What are you doing here? Leave, you're causing a scene. To a stranger, I might look like the aggressor, but I don't care. Jamie, please stop. I can't live without my husband and son. Such a dull performance. It's all for nothing, I said with a laugh, and Kristen suddenly lowered her voice. Oh, is that so? You can say that now, but you'll need help someday. You should start being nice to me while you still can. And where does that confidence come from? I can't understand it with my limited brain. I shouted, expecting Kristen to lash out in anger, but instead, she began to fake cry again. You're so cruel. I didn't do anything. Like a scene from a movie, she exaggerated her sorrow, making me sigh. You're right. I was wrong to you. I'm sorry. Then, she stopped crying and smiled. Finally, you understand? You need to treat me better. Yes, I truly feel bad. I meant to share it only with Trace, but out of habit, I accidentally sent the video to our choir group too. You probably don't know, but our choir is big, with many members in this area, including some with family in the police. Oh, over here, I'm sorry to trouble you. This is Kristen, who planned to send Trace and me to heaven. Can you take her, please? I introduced Kristen to the young police officer who had arrived. What? No, I don't want to go to the police. Get out of my way. However, after causing such a ruckus with a megaphone outside my ex-husband's house, there was no way the police would let her go. Anticipating this, I had already spoken to the police and informed my neighbors. So, from the beginning, Kristen didn't realize she was being laughed at, playing the role of a pitiful, crazy person. Help me! She continued her strange act to the end, but my neighbors, who cared for me and Lionel, didn't speak ill of me. In fact, I even reconnected with some people I had grown distant from after my husband's death, which was an unexpected but pleasant outcome. Later, Kristen lost all her inheritance and even her lover left her. She wandered around our neighborhood a few times, but unable to bear the mockery, she eventually stopped coming. Rumor has it she's now living alone in a small, hidden apartment. As for me, I've decided to accompany Trace and Lionel on his overseas assignment. I thought about selling the house, but I wanted to stay connected with my beloved neighbors, so I'm renting it out. Lionel, who apparently was scared of Kristen's anger when they were alone, has surprisingly easily adjusted to life without her. I hope Trace finds a kind wife soon, and I was hesitant to be an obstacle to his new encounters. But Trace and Lionel depend on me, so for now, we'll continue enjoying our meals together as a family.
Next, we have a surprise speech from the bride. And you won't believe it, but she's addressing her mother. Please, go ahead.
The announcement was met with applause from the guests as they turned their attention toward me. I stood up, moved. Despite our clashes during her rebellious years, I always tried to shower her with love, in my own way, truly considering her my daughter. It seemed Sierra understood that. Becoming a mother, I've never felt a moment as blissful as this. My eyes were already welling up with tears. But the words that came out of Sierra's mouth were the complete opposite of what I imagined, shocking not just me but everyone in the room. I've never thought of you as my mom, and I want you to stay out of my life from now on. Feeling the gaze of the murmuring crowd, I took a deep breath. What was once a heart full of joy was now filled with sorrow and anger. So, you're okay with that? You won't regret it? I won't, Sierra said, smiling in a way that didn't suit her pure white dress at all. If that's how she feels, then so be it. I responded, understood, and left the venue alone. My name is Florence. I'm a 55-year-old woman, working busy every day. Not to boast, but I'm competent enough to have been chosen as the first female department head in a major corporation. My husband, Matthew, is 5 years my junior. We got married when I was 40, after he became my direct subordinate at work. Matthew had been through a divorce and was a single father. Despite not being the most skilled at work, Matthew had high domestic skills and was very homey. At first, I was often irritated by Matthew's mistakes, but after realizing his attentiveness, my view of him changed. After his divorce, he was depressingly down for a while, but I felt a desire to support the stoically enduring Matthew. At that time, Matthew had an 8-year-old daughter, and I thought it cruel to make her part of a new family, considering my inability to do household chores and my commitment to work. However, when Matthew asked me out during a business trip, I was taken aback. I can't do household chores, take time off work to spend with a child, or adjust my work hours for a child's sake. It would be better for your daughter to find someone who can truly be a mother to her. I initially rejected him, but Matthew said, I'm not good at my job, so I'm thinking of transferring to a department with no overtime. I'm good at housework, and my daughter is 8, so she can basically do everything herself. You don't have to try to be a mother, just talking to her when you're home and listening to her female troubles would make me happy. Hearing this, then, let's give it a try. We started dating. Honestly, I still struggled with the ideal of motherhood versus my reality, but deep down, I always wanted a child, and I treated Sierra as my own daughter. From the start, Sierra was very friendly with me, and on weekends, we would go shopping for clothes or watch movies together, like friends. After 2 years of careful relationship building and obtaining Sierra's approval, we got married when she was 10. Sierra and I underwent an adoption process, making us legally mother and daughter. Our relationship started to change about 6 years after we began living together, around the time Sierra was in high school. She started wearing shorter skirts and heavier makeup, becoming a bit more flamboyant. Especially when it came to her curfew, she wouldn't come on time. I allowed her to work part-time until 10 p.m., but she would always return home from her job, a 10-minute walk away, after midnight. Sierra, you've been coming home late recently. It's dangerous at night, so I'd like you to come straight home.
Shut up! You're not my real mom, so stop butting in.
Sierra. Behind the slammed door, I could hear Sierra complaining about me on the phone. After several such incidents, our relationship deteriorated. Sierra, maybe it's just a phase. We were getting along so well.
Don't worry about it. It's just a phase where she can't be honest. She talks about how grateful she is to you. It's just for now.
I hope so.
I think she's just being spoiled. But it's hard on you, Florence. Sorry.
It's okay. After all, I chose to be her mother. To that, Matthew smiled gently and said,
Thank you.
Matthew has taken on all the household chores for me, busy with work. Of course, I help out on weekends, and I can't just give up here for Matthew, who supports me with a smile and without complaints. With that thought, I continued to engage with Sierra. Being called an old woman and someone without blood ties was painful, but I could bear it because of Matthew's support and the memories of the good times with Sierra. Throughout high school, Sierra continued to rebel against me. Then, as a college student, she began ignoring me. Being treated as if I didn't exist was even harder than the rebellion. And this ignoring happened only when Matthew wasn't around. On the contrary, when Matthew was present, she would interact with me just like the old times. Honestly, I was scared of Sierra's behavior. But since she didn't act this way in front of Matthew, he might not believe me if I told him. I shed tears in private but pretended to be a happy family with Sierra in front of Matthew. Then, after graduating college and starting a job, while Matthew was out shopping, Sierra brought me a gift. Why all of a sudden? I wondered, to which Sierra smiled sheepishly.
I haven't been a good daughter for the past 7 years, since high school. I was rude and ignored you. I really wanted to get along, but I just couldn't be honest. I'm sorry. Can we get along like before?
Sierra. It's okay. After all, I am your mom.
Florence. Thank you.
Saying this, Sierra went back to her room. The gift was a wallet from my favorite brand, and I was so happy that I cried. After that, although awkward, we managed to get along relatively well, going out together and relaxing at home watching TV. Matthew seemed relieved seeing us like this. He must have been tense and unsettled for the past 7 years, trying to mediate and support me in various ways. I had no doubt that these efforts would positively affect our family relationships moving forward. However, I sometimes felt like money was missing from my wallet. Since Matthew wouldn't do such a thing, I suspected Sierra but didn't want to confront her and risk returning to our previous relationship. I wasn't keeping a ledger, so it might have been a misunderstanding. With that thought, I pretended not to notice and carried on. 3 years after Sierra started working, she suddenly brought home a boyfriend. A friend from college. Albert, her boyfriend, who just got a job this year, planned to get married next year, having already booked the venue. We were surprised but blessed them. Albert seemed a bit timid, but maybe someone like him was good for the strong-willed Sierra. Thinking so, I discussed plans for our second life with Matthew over drinks. Then, Sierra enjoyed her last moments of single life, traveling with friends and dating Albert. I still felt the wallet thinning but hesitated to speak up, not wanting to dampen the happy Sierra's spirits. Reflecting back, I felt I hadn't fully embraced motherhood, yet at the time, I was fixated on the ideal of a mother desiring her daughter's happiness. As the wedding approached, Sierra announced her pregnancy. I was overjoyed at the thought of seeing my grandchild, having given up on marriage and children myself. Fortunately, her pregnancy was smooth, with only mild morning sickness, so the wedding went as planned, with only the honeymoon cancelled for safety. We understood the concerns about traveling during pregnancy. However, one thing bothered me. Albert's expression darkened when the topic of children came up. Becoming silent.
Albert, you seem down. What's wrong?
Do I? Maybe it's just the nerves of becoming a father. His response was dismissive, but I was convinced that must be the case. Little did I know that I would be shocked to learn the real reason from Albert later. On the wedding day. The ceremony was a big success with many attendees. Knowing how much everyone loved Sierra made me incredibly happy.
Next, we have a surprise speech from the bride. And you won't believe it, but she's addressing her mother. Please, go ahead.
The announcement was met with applause from the guests as they turned their attention toward me. I stood up, moved. Despite our clashes during her rebellious years, I always tried to shower her with love, in my own way, truly considering her my daughter. Sierra must have understood that. Becoming a mother, there's no moment as blissful as this. My eyes were already welling up with tears. However, the words that came out of Sierra's mouth were the complete opposite of what I imagined, shocking not just me but everyone in the room.
I've never thought of you as my mom, and I want you to stay out of my life from now on.
Feeling the gaze of the murmuring crowd, I took a deep breath. What was once a heart full of joy was now filled with sorrow and anger. So, you're okay with that? You won't regret it?
I won't,
Sierra said, smiling in a way that didn't suit her pure white dress at all. If that's how she feels, then so be it. I responded. Understood. And left the venue alone. Minutes later, Matthew caught up to me. Apparently, Sierra and Albert were in the middle of an argument, causing a halt to the ceremony. It was expected, but Sierra's nerve to continue the ceremony in such a situation was beyond me.
Because we've been getting along lately, I never imagined Sierra would say something like that.
I'm truly sorry.
No, Matthew. It's not your fault. I think it's because I wasn't able to understand Sierra's feelings. But
I hesitated, and it seemed Matthew understood. He looked a bit sad, but still smiled at me and said,
It's only natural. You don't have to deal with Sierra anymore. She's an adult now. Even if her marriage falls through, she can live on her own, and it's probably best to move and cut ties. If she hates living with us that much, divorce might be inevitable.
Divorce?
I married you because it's you. But I do have something I want to say to Sierra, to cut ties properly.
Say whatever you need to. I'm on your side. I hadn't expected Matthew to take my side. Though Sierra is his daughter, and it might seem right to support her, the gentle Matthew I knew was deeply upset by Sierra's actions, so I decided it was Sierra who was in the wrong. And then Matthew took my hand, and we went back to the reception. The venue was buzzing, and at the back, the bride and groom, Albert and Sierra, were arguing.
What's wrong with saying not a mom to a woman who isn't my mom? It doesn't matter if she's not your real mother, she's lived with you and raised you since you were 10. I don't understand how you can humiliate someone like that in front of so many people. It was faster to say it here. This isn't something to ruin the ceremony over.
They stopped arguing when they saw me. Then Albert quickly came over to apologize.
I'm very sorry for what happened. I knew there was going to be a surprise, but I was told the details were a secret until today. I assumed it would be to express gratitude. Hey! Why are you apologizing to her?
Sierra yelled, her face looking demonic, not an expression suited for someone in a wedding dress. Matthew sighed next to me and then spoke up.
Sierra, How could you say such disrespectful things to Florence? She has raised you with me since you were 10. We've been getting along recently, haven't we?
Dad, what are you talking about? That was all preparation for today, to completely crush her.
It hurts more if you're nice first and then drop them.
Unaware of the surrounding disdain, Sierra laughed loudly. However, seeing Matthew's expression, she suddenly panicked. Matthew, not typically prone to anger and always smiling. Rarely scolded, even for tardiness or breaking things. But Matthew, when he does get angry and turns cold and logical, is probably several times scarier than me, always angry.
Sierra, you struggled in school, didn't you? Your grades were bad, and keeping up in class was tough. What are you talking about all of a sudden? You went to tutoring and lessons as you pleased, and you received plenty of allowance every time, right?
Yeah, so? What about it?
And college? Somehow you made it to a private university, went abroad under the guise of studying, but just played around and didn't improve your Spanish at all.
As more was revealed, Sierra's complexion worsened. She was not academically inclined, but her pride was high, making the current situation particularly inconvenient for her. Then Matthew, with a smile, dropped a bombshell.
Who do you think paid for all of that? Florence did. What? That's a lie. You're the man of the house and you make more money.
Sierra refused to believe it, prompting Matthew to start talking about my position and his current department.
Becoming a single father, I struggled because I couldn't spend time with you. At that time, it was Florence who suggested I move to a different department. Even though we were dating and couldn't find time for dates, Florence told me to prioritize time with you. No one ever told me about that. Florence doesn't talk much about it. I think she was protecting my pride. She was already a department head back then and was 3 to 4 times busier than me. Yet, she took over my overtime until I could transfer departments, and she was the one who proposed at that time. I'll take care of the living expenses and household. So Matthew, you just do the housework and spend time with the child. There's no woman like her.
For the first time, Sierra was speechless upon hearing the truth. Matthew turned to me with a smile and took my hand. I squeezed back and looked at him. Turning back to Sierra, Matthew declared,
No matter how important my daughter is, I cannot call someone who insults my wife and the mother who's been with us for 15 years in such a manner my child anymore. From today, we're cutting ties. Why would you choose that woman over your own daughter?
Sierra was completely flustered as she confronted Matthew, whose expression remained unchanged. Still, Sierra clung to him.
Dad, I'll reflect on what happened today. Please forgive me.
Matthew did not respond. From an outsider's perspective, it might seem pitiful, but Sierra deserved to face the consequences of her actions. However, instead of showing remorse, Sierra glared at me. Resignedly, I decided to reveal something I had intended to keep to myself for the moment. By the way, I've noticed money occasionally missing from my wallet. Do you know anything about that?
Are you accusing me? You only have $300 in there anyway. How do you know there's only $300 in my wallet? Oh crap!
Sierra's face turned pale as if she had just slipped up. In fact, since I became suspicious, I had kept a consistent amount of $300 in my wallet for years. Only I knew this, not even Matthew, let alone Sierra.
The only ones who would know what's in my wallet are either me or someone who has been stealing cash from it. I didn't know, maybe you mentioned it somewhere. I haven't told Matthew, so why would I tell you? What?
Sierra was at a loss for words. Then Susan, a friend of the bride sitting on the bride's side, stood up.
You're still doing that. I kept quiet because you said you'd stop. Shut up, you!
Sierra panicked and tried to intervene, but Matthew stopped her and prompted Susan to continue.
When we were students, I had money taken from my wallet. It was only discovered because I happened to witness it, but there must have been other victims too. Since we were best friends and she was going through a tough time, I forgave her, thinking it was just a mistake. But I never imagined she'd do it to her stepmother too.
This caused a stir among the groom's side. The groom's family included many police officers, making it impossible for them to accept a family member, let alone the bride, being involved in theft.
Sierra, I can't marry a woman who steals. It's a misunderstanding. This is all a misunderstanding.
Sierra clung to Albert in desperation. Albert shook her off with annoyance.
That's not all. Not just this incident, but I've been meaning to keep quiet about it. However, that child in your belly, it's not mine, is it? What?
The surprise wasn't mine alone. Even Sierra herself froze, eyes wide.
As a child, I had an accident and was told I might not be able to have children. And we haven't been intimate recently, yet you're pregnant and cheating on me. I haven't cheated. Yes, you have. With him.
Albert pointed at Taylor, a male friend of Sierra's sitting among the guests, turning all eyes on him as his face went pale.
There's no proof. You have no proof. Here, look.
Albert showed his smartphone with a photo of Sierra holding hands with Taylor as they entered a lodging facility. Sierra stumbled back in shock, her mouth moving wordlessly.
We'll know whose child it is with a DNA test. If it's mine, I'll pay child support. What about our marriage? Why would I? You steal, cheat, and bring harm instead of gratitude. Who would want to marry someone like that?
Albert shouted at Sierra, then apologized to us again. We, too, were drawn into apologizing. How could you? This is terrible.
You're the terrible one. You betrayed trust. Reflect on that alone from now on.
Matthew firmly pushed her away and approached Taylor, delivering a forceful punch. Taylor, his face drained of color, apologized profusely.
Depending on the DNA test, you'd better take responsibility.
Yes, I will. Matthew then apologized to the guests. I joined in the apology. The guests comforted us warmly, their kindness overwhelming in light of our failure to reciprocate. Afterward, Sierra's engagement was broken off. Since the marriage application was to be filed after the ceremony, no legal marriage occurred, but she was demanded to pay a compensation similar to infidelity during marriage. Naturally, Sierra turned to Matthew, who completely ignored her and turned her away. The cause of her dipping into people's money was her spending habits. It turned out Sierra was in debt, trying to repay what she owed. She had been taking small amounts of money from colleagues, superiors, and friends' wallets, which led to her dismissal when discovered. Though not sued, she had to pay back the amounts taken and compensation. Working tirelessly to pay off her debts, Sierra frequently sought Matthew's help, still believing he would assist her, but he had completely written her off, ensuring no future aid. This behavior of taking money started during her student days, seemingly habitual. As a last act of kindness, or rather to prevent further trouble, Matthew booked counseling for her, taking her once a month. It seems Sierra has disliked me since the remarriage, constantly calling me a bitch for stealing her beloved father. Despite appearing close, a friend of Sierra's mentioned that her true nature emerged after her teenage facade faded. Albert, initially devastated and nearly succumbing to depression, was cared for by a childhood friend who lived nearby, recovering thanks to their devoted care. This friend, who had harbored feelings for Albert from a young age, later began a relationship with him. This friend comes from a distinguished family with a history of producing police officials. Though regrettable how things turned out, I hope for their happiness. As for me, I decided to take early retirement to enjoy our later years with Matthew. Announcing sudden retirement after a career of dedication caused quite a stir, but explaining the reason led to understanding, planning to retire at the fiscal year's end. With Matthew already wanting early retirement, our frugal lifestyle ensured we had enough savings for a modest life. We planned to buy a small house in the countryside, start a vegetable garden, and live simply. Though I miss the presence of someone I thought of as a daughter, I look forward to our future life. In this era of living a century, it's a win to pursue what you desire. Swearing under the open sky to live a joyful life with Matthew, I took a step forward.